All right, the time has come for our special council meeting, committee of the whole. Roll call, please.
Alderman Seager.
Present.
Alderman Mozio. Alderman Villalobos.
Present.
Alderman Newsome.
Present.
Alderman Tempest.
Present.
Alderman May.
Present.
Alderman Valco.
Present.
Alderman Taylor.
Present.
Mayor Cunningham.
Present. Do we want to do the pledge?
Yeah.
Let's do the pledge, everybody. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everyone should have, I want to say, everyone has their docket, their budget book, all right? And I have a comment before we turn it over to Tina. Alderman, staff, interested members of the media and citizens of Waukegan. We have convened a special meeting for the city, for Waukegan City Council for the purpose of presenting the 2018 fiscal year budget. The fiscal year budget appropriates funds and allocates resources for the delivery of public goods and services to the residents of our great city. I would like to remind all present, and I will do this again on Saturday at our community meetings, that a municipal budget is more than just a financial document. The budget also serves as a document presenting our policies and priorities. Bless you. The annual budget document tells our citizenry in black and white what we believe is important. With this being said, before I hand over more detailed presentation to our Chief Financial Officer, I would like to offer a few comments. First, as clearly expressed in the budget transmittal letter, I am disappointed that our previous mayor did not formulate a budget prior to the transferring of office. A city with 488.5 staff positions and 126.5 million operating budget deserves a mayor committed to protecting the public's trust until the legal transfer of power. The formulation of a budget, especially one for a city our size, which is a technical and complicated process. This responsibility cannot be taken lightly. Too much is at stake. For this reason, the budget is usually completed by the outgoing mayor well before the transfer of office. Enough dismay expressed, we have to move forward and continue providing the services that ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all in our community. It is with this brief background that this budget is presented. 126.5 million operating budget being presented allows our city to continue providing necessary public services and begin the year top to bottom with an assessment. Fiscal year 18 general fund budget calls for a total of $68.6 million in revenues and expenditures of $74 million. After a $2.5 million transfer in the general fund has a projected deficit of $3 million. It is this projected $3 million deficit in our general fund that prohibits increasing services during this first year. There is no smoke and mirrors here. I said I would be transparent, and here are the facts. The prior administration made no provisions for any new capital funding. These financial resources are desperately needed for repairs to our city's streets, buildings, and equipment. This failure to pursue the issuance of a bond or note has resulted in no revenues for fiscal year 2018. There are, however, $1.2 million in bond proceeds remaining from prior years that will be utilized to move forward with a limited capital program for fiscal year 2018. Total capital funds, estimated expenditures $1.2 million include $1 million in street renewal and replacement, $200,000 for facility improvements. As we move forward, and in response to the constraints placed upon our city, I will work with experts to thoroughly assess the conditions of our city infrastructure. 2 comprehensive studies will take place this upcoming year to assist the city's leadership in planning for reinvestment in its assets and identify the most effective and economical method for funding the same. All is not gloom. The glass can be half full. It is important to note that all funds budgeted for fiscal 2018 has total revenues of $152.1 million, expenditures of $139.8 million, with no net transfers and resulting surplus of $12.2 million. In addition, we will continue with the city's lakefront active implementation plan as well as beach rangers program to ensure the city's beach remains family friendly and environmentally sound. We will also be reinstating the summer work program with staff to be deployed citywide to beautify our community. These are the cards we have been dealt. We cannot and will not throw our hands up in defeat. This is a new era, a new chapter for Waukegan. We will move forward together, accepting our challenges, knowing that they are opportunities. And though our first year may offer obstacles, nothing great comes easy. Before I turn this over to Tina, I'm gonna say Tina S. I want to thank her and the entire city staff for their efforts in crafting a document for you. I would also like to thank the City Council for their attention and dedication. Finally, I would just like to remind all of the community meetings this Saturday, June 3rd, at 9 a.m. held at Belvedere Park Recreation Center. Please join us for your questions and comments. I'm going to repeat that. This Saturday, we will have another budget hearing. Well, it's not a community budget hearing. It will be this Saturday, June 3rd, at the Belvedere Park Recreation Center. And it will start at 9 a.m. Now I will turn it over to Tina to take over. Thank you for your patience.
Can I
Comment.
have a comment?
Comment.
Can I ask, when we put this letter out to the public, can we tame it down a little bit? I understand that where you're coming from with some of your discussion here, but I think it serves the public no good for us to kind of turn on each other. Some of the things that we talk about in here, the property tax levy adopted under the prior administration shifted tax dollars away from operations and public goods and services to pension obligations. I mean, we voted on that. We're part of that. In a sense, these are things that happen in administrations. I just think that if we are trying to promote unity in our city, that it's not such a good idea to start calling out people in a letter that is going to the public. I just think it needs to be tamed down just a touch.
Yes, ma'am. Duly noted. I'll have it, Tina and I will have it looked at, not Tina and I will have it looked at again, have it rewritten, and before it goes out, sent to all the aldermen, just so everybody can review. Is that fair to all the aldermen? Alderman Valco.
That's fair. Beside what Alderman Taylor said, in the second paragraph you have the property tax levy adopted under the prior administration shifted tax dollars away from operations and the delivery of public goods and services to pension obligations. All 9 of us up here, including yourself,
Yes, sir.
when you were an alderman, voted the last 3 years for a tax increase freeze.
Yes, sir.
So to blame the last 3 years on the prior administration, it was us as aldermen that said no more tax increases for the citizens of Waukegan. And to say that that prevented us from doing pension obligations is not correct. Because by law, we have to put in a certain amount of millions of dollars. It might be close to 6 last couple of years. I think the fire department might be 4 something, and the police department is like 6. So on average between $8 and $10 million. That's by state law, that Department of Insurance. And then this year, we're really going to get clobbered because the Department of Insurance
Jacked it up.
all of a sudden, unbeknownst to anybody, said, well, we want more. And that's where this magical number is going to come from here. So it had nothing to do with the prior administration, had nothing to do with taking away from goods and services from the citizens of Waukegan. We had nothing to do with this new thing. It's the Department of Insurance, the state of Illinois, for pension obligations.
Yes.
Okay? And we, every year we put in our mandatory statutory limits. We fell behind, not in the prior administration, not in the Sabanjan II administration, but the 2 administrations previous to that weren't paying the sufficient funds. And that's where we all fell back from. We fell from approximately 60, 70% down to 48%. And with the amount of money we're putting in, $900,000 a year from gaming, we're back up to about 52, 53%. So slowly but surely, we're climbing up there. But it has nothing to do with taking away goods and services from the citizens of Waukegan and putting them in pension obligations. That's just another thing that Alderman Taylor was stating. The other thing in your letter, sir, and you made mention of it, we will be bringing back summer workers to be deployed citywide for the curbs and everything else. Mm-hmm. Is that a wish, or have we gotten a grant on
I'm sorry, is that a wish?
Is that a wish that we hopefully we're going to do it, or have we gotten a grant?
That is part of the budget proposal, yes, sir. And I don't know if it's a wish. That's something we want to do. If we take a look at our overall budget, bringing back summer help is not the issue. Never has been. I think the reason we got rid of the summer help in the past, it was because of when the layoffs came. When the layoffs came to us, we could not have part-timers stay on while full-timers were there. I think it's important that we do this, Bill. Having these summer kids. I mean, from our high school and college, yeah. So yeah.
But we have not gotten a grant.
No, this would not be grant. Now, I have not looked at us going for a grant for that because I don't think, over my years of being in a part of the city, I don't think they would give grants for summer help. But I know Workforce Development has some programs and funding that they have that we can help out with that. But right now, for the use that we're used to, and the help and support that we got from those young men and young ladies who worked in the summertime, it paid dividends 3 times over. So I'm a fan of that, and we go from there.
Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. Alderman May, I'm sorry.
Just along those lines, and maybe we're going to get to it when we get to that section.
Yes, ma'am.
So does that mean that I thought we had a contract for lawn mowing and those type of services, which used to be what the summer workers
GNS?
did? Yeah, so
Yes.
Is that contract being broken, or didn't we have another year on that contract?
No, what we did, extended it until we got these young men and young ladies up to speed. So, yeah, I think that contract is going to end July. What year did we passed it? What year? But what month? The end of July. I think we went to July 1st on that.
Of 2018?
No.
Or 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We had some grass cutting that need to be done right now, and in the meantime, we went month to month so we can at least keep up to speed with that until these young men and young ladies became a part of our program.
And do we still have the equipment to facilitate summer lawn mowing and all that kind of stuff?
On the GNS contract, I thought that came to last council for
Yeah.
a 2-month extension.
Yeah.
Oh, it was only a 2-month extension? I thought that was,
Yeah.
I thought that was the maintenance contract. I thought that was a custodial maintenance contract.
Is like, when you recall, we sent the GNS or just the maintenance contract? Oh, it does?
They go.
We'll have to look at it for cancellation.
Yeah, I'm almost.
Well, I'm just saying before we hire people, if we have an outstanding, okay.
I think there's other things the summer help to do other than to cut grass too. But by
Okay.
city council, then we'll address that.
Okay, when we get to that item.
The summer interns, not the beach, but the public works summer interns are actually being funded out of the water fund, not the general fund.
Can't hear you.
Mike, come on up, sir. Oh, okay. The one- No, 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 no,
That's okay, and
no,
I'm
no,
sorry to
sir.
take us out of order.
No,
but
no,
there's
come on
more.
up, Mike, and just explain that piece, then we'll let Tina go, and we go
I
from
gotta go
there.
to Tina.
Mike's over here.
Actually, what happened is GNS right now is taking, and over the years, they've been added different things to their, not actually their contract, but extensions, and like roadside grass cutting, they've been doing over at OMC, and we're starting to take that away from them. Those were extras we paid for, okay? So by doing that, we have the manpower as far as with these kids and the cleanup, and we have the equipment. In fact, they just went through most of the equipment, it's ready to go. So we're, because this year, after talking to OMC, the Outdoor Marine Corporation was, and the EPA, we're gonna be cutting more grass there too. So this actually, by the time it's done, should save us money.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great questions, Alderman. And duly noted, I will look at this letter, tone it down, and more of a, I'm not going to say friendly, more of a we, not a he or a point. And thank you for that. I really appreciate that, all the aldermen for their questions. If there are not any more questions, we'll turn it over to Tina to start. I'm sorry.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
How
Alderman
many-
Seeger.
how many part-timers are we talking about?
I think 10.
10 for the beach and 10 for public works.
10.
20?
Yeah,
20.
but the beach was already in the budget. Those are the Rangers.
Right.
Okay.
And
Hours have to be below a certain amount because of the Affordable Care Act. So these are really, really part-time, so that we don't trigger any.
They're seasonal. Seasonal
Not even
would be
seasonal.
correct, right?
Well, seasonal, and they cannot even work 40 hours. a
Seasonal
week during
part-time.
The summer,
yes.
because of the Affordable Care Act.
Okay. Any other questions from the alderman at this point?
One more, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
What would the pay rate for this summer help?
$10 to $12 an hour.
Okay, thank you very much, Tina.
And if you guys have any questions for me, just holler. I have my back to you. It's just the way this is set up, so I apologize
Okay.
for that.
All right.
Okay, so introduction of the budget. The city of Waukegan is a full-service government with a full-time mayor and 9 elected aldermen that are elected on a ward basis. The city clerk and the treasurer are also elected. The city provides police, fire, emergency dispatch, and public works services to its residents. Oh, sorry. As well as maintaining a water plant and providing other important municipal services such as code enforcement and economic development. The city, for budgetary purposes, is divided into 5 functional areas that you see here: building, planning, and development, central administration services, fire and medical emergency, police and emergency 911, and then public works, engineering, and water sewer. The mayor touched on our operating budget. The revenues, expenditures, and net transfers between funds are shown here. The red is negative, and we have all of our operating fund types. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. It's all in the book, but if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. So the operating budget, that includes everything from our general fund through our internal service funds, has revenues of $122.2 million and expenditures of $126.5 million. Net transfers of $1.7 million to the positive, resulting in a deficit of $2.6 million overall from an operations standpoint. When you add in the funds that include police pension, fire pension, and our working cash or rainy day fund, all funds that will be appropriated are $152 million in revenues, $140 million in expenses, which does result in the surplus that he spoke about, which is $12.3 million, and then transfers do net out to zero between those.
Question. We're talking about the operating budget.
Correct.
which is almost always in the red, and then the total budget.
Right.
As of $12 million in the black right now, we're better off right now than we were last year at this stage of the game, is that correct? We didn't have $12 million.
I don't, rating agencies would not include those funds in your overall assessment. So I can't say that I would agree with that statement. This surplus is the police and fire pension fund surplus, and this is on a cash basis, not an accrual basis. It's not adjusted for long-term liabilities. So what this is saying is that the police and fire pension funds will take in cash more inflow than in next year we're projecting an outflow. But as you stated, they're only about 50% funded. So this is a cash flow look. So no, I don't think it indicates that we're better or worse off. Rating agencies would look at your overall operations, and then they also would look at things like pension funding, reinvestment in capital assets. So I would be careful making that statement with this.
But we're higher in the black than we were last year at this time.
Okay. From a cash basis?
Yes.
But that money is the police and fire pension funds, not ours. Okay. I just want to make sure that we all understand that those resources aren't ours that we can use. We can't, I mean, I suppose we could ask the police and fire pension funds for a loan, but once the money goes to the police and fire pension fund, it's not the city's to use. And we're still, even at that surplus, we're still grossly underfunded. Correct. So. Right. This is really budget.
This surplus is not what we usually think of as a surplus.
Correct.
It's not a
We usually look at the operating, and again, this is on a cash basis, not an accrual basis. So, so budget by fund. Again, this is just looking at our operations, our operating funds. The general fund, as usual, is the largest fund, and that has an annual budget that is 58% of our total expenditures and transfers out. The special revenue funds have increased over time in the past few years. Their percentage of the total, and that's related to TIFs and grants we've had and things like that. They account for 15% of our budget. Capital fluctuates from year to year. This year, we only have 1.2 million to spend, so that's down to 9% of our budget. Other years, when we've done bonds, it's been much higher. And then the debt service, enterprise, and internal service funds round out the rest of the operating budget at 26%. So here's our operating budgets, our revenue expenditures from fiscal year 2015 to the currently proposed budget. And from 15 to current, our revenues and transfers in have grown from 119 million to 126 million. So that's a 6% increase over that 4-year period. And expenditures have grown from 106 million to 129, which is a 21% increase over that same time period. So our revenues have gone up 6% projected, and our expenses have gone up 21%. Headcount. So for the upcoming fiscal year, the proposed budget has headcount of 488.5 positions. Some people ask how there's a half a person. This is actually full-time equivalents. So for example, for the summer interns, we count those at 0.25 each. For our part-time evidence tech in the police department that handles some of our videos, we count that as 0.5. So we have proposed 488.5 positions. 87% of the positions come from the general fund, followed by 11 in the enterprise fund, and 1% of those are in special revenues. Just a point, just a fact, we have several collective bargaining agreements with our employee groups, and as a result, 81% of our positions are covered by union contracts, or our FTEs. The police and fire department, this looked better before I put it up on the screen, so I apologize. 74%, you can't see that anymore, 74% of our FTEs are public safety positions. They're in police and there's civilians included in that, but their police and fire department makes up 74% of our FTEs. Public works at 12%, and the remaining departments account for 14%. Full-time equivalents has increased by 8.5 net positions since last fiscal year's budget and 15.5 positions since fiscal year 15.
Question? So we're actually going up 8 people this year?
We're going up 8.5 FTEs, so full-time equivalent positions. Net, so that's the net, between positions eliminated and added.
Correct.
And there's much, much more detail about the positions and the titles in the budget document that's available online. As well, there's some hard copies here tonight.
Okay, because we didn't get your graph there, we didn't get that.
There's a graph for headcount in the executive summary. I can email you this PowerPoint, but all the data that's included in this is also in the budget document.
Right here, Bill. It should be the last of the general fund. Second, it's the last page.
Well, in the executive summary, and again, I
Page
didn't do
20.
the, page 20 of the executive summary is FTEs by department
Yeah.
over the same time
I'm
period.
talking about the graph that you just had.
I can email this to you. I used the data from here.
Because it was something new to me and I hadn't seen it before.
I had a whole color scheme I was trying to stick to for the presentation. For the general fund, funding of the majority of city operations come from the general fund, and this fund focuses on near-term inflows and outflows of our spendable resources. The general fund is mostly tax-based, and that's what I'm going to focus on tonight, but also does include some intergovernmental revenues, fees, fines, and charges. The general fund is divided into 7 cost centers: central services, building, planning and development, fire, police, public works, and our environmental cost center. The fiscal year 18 general fund budget calls for a total of $68.6 million in revenues and expenditures of $74 million. After a $2.5 million transfer in, the general fund has a projected deficit of $3 million. Compared to the prior year budget, revenues are expected to increase 2% or $1 million overall. General fund expenditures, however, are projected to increase 6% or $4.3 million compared to last year's budget. In addition, the general fund has a planned transfer in from the working cash fund of $2.5 million, and that's to pay the 3rd and final installment on a wrongful incarceration lawsuit settlement. Tax revenues account for 80% of the general fund and are projected to be $56.1 million for fiscal year 18, which is a 3% increase over the prior year. Sales and related taxes are expected to increase 2% over the prior year budget to a total of $16.8 million. Even though we lost U-line for sales tax revenues, trends in inflation should be favorable in this area. So hopefully that 2% is conservative enough that we can meet those goals. U-line was one of our largest sales tax producers. Utility and telecommunication taxes are expected to decline by 9% collectively for a total of $9.3 million. And the driving factor for this decrease is based on actual results during fiscal year 17 that showed original projections for these economically dependent revenues were overly optimistic. In particular, we're seeing declines in telecommunication tax and also cable franchise. There's just other options for people out there for those types of services. So. Income tax and personal property replacement tax, which is a portion of the state's income tax, is budgeted to decline 14% versus the prior year budget for $12.6 million. But this is still just a touch over fiscal year projections. If you'll recall last year, when we were working on the fiscal year 17 budget, there was a very strong possibility that the state was going to change the formula for state income tax. So we really ratcheted down our projections, and then none of that legislation passed. So that's why our projections have changed a little bit there. The income tax continues to struggle statewide, and ours is just based on a formula. The city has also, we have hotel and motel tax and food and beverage tax. These two combined call for $2.8 million in revenues. This is 3% above the fiscal year budget, and we hope to have continued our compliance to make sure that these taxes continue to be able to support operations. So our property taxes that are allocated to the general fund. and this is a graph that shows fiscal year 15 through 18. We levy for property taxes for many purposes: general government, employer pension contributions, our residential garbage collection, the Waukegan Public Library, and also bonded debt service. The pension levies for police and fire are recorded to the general fund and account for 21% of the general fund tax revenues entirely. So when you look at our big bucket of tax money, 21% of that is going to police and fire pensions as soon as it's collected. The other property levies, including garbage collection, the library, and debt service, are accounted for in either the special revenue or the debt service fund sections. And in the upcoming fiscal year, we're going to levy $11.19 million for our 3 pension funds. Police pension levy will be $8 million. It's up from 6. Fire pension will be $5.4 million, and you can see that that's up from 4. The IMRF levy, however, has been reduced to $660,000, which is only a fraction of what our employer obligation is in that regard. However, when the property tax levy was passed to be a flat dollar amount, the corporate levy was completely eliminated, which in the prior year we had $2 million that went to operations from the property tax levy, which we do not have in fiscal year 18. And we kind of solved, for lack of a better term, the IMRF levy, and that got what was left over from the tax levy at a flat dollar amount. Over this time period, property tax dollars dedicated to pension obligations has gone up 26%. Actually, that's from last year. So the pension obligations have gone up 26%, 31% since fiscal year 15.
And just so the general audience knows, or the other aldermen, exactly the reason for that was it for the Department of Insurance increasing their formula or whatever on the
Department of
what we have to pay?
There was a statutory change in the formula. The Department of Insurance is only the one that monitors and enforces. There was a statutory change that caught up with us last year, where you had to have a certain amount of investment income. Your actual investment returns couldn't diverge as much from what your actuary was using as an assumption. So we actually had to reduce our investment assumptions. We went from 7.5% to 7%, which is still over what we've earned for the last quite few years. And there's been an increase overall throughout the state in disability pensions and things like that. So when they pass that formula change and some of those rules that are favorable to the funding levels of the pension funds, that was the take on that was to create a tier 2, so that new police and fire have to work a little longer, their benefits aren't as robust. We have an older department with both departments without a lot of turnover, so the tier 2 won't really benefit us financially, probably for another decade or 2.
So it had to do with the investment returns, and I apologize, because you and I had this conversation 3 or 4 months ago, and it has nothing to do with the 2040 rule, that should be almost 80% of
They just keep kicking the can. I mean, they, right.
It had nothing to do with that. It was the investment return.
It was, right. Our investment return assumptions weren't conservative enough, given the new statutory requirements. To be fair, if our pension funds had been historically better funded, we wouldn't have seen a 33% in our contribution rate in 1 year. And that's a legacy funding issue.
So 21% comes from tax revenues. Where does the video gambling money fit into that?
The video gaming, and I'll cover that in a later section. The video gaming does go both to police and fire pension funds, and it's helpful, but it's not in the millions of dollars of funding.
Like approximately what percentage does that make up towards that then?
Oh.
Less than
minimal,
right? Yeah, it's less than $1 million for both funds combined.
It's probably less than 1%, 2%.
Right.
tops.
But it's a step in the right direction. The rating agencies love that we've done that. It was definitely a good step to take. It shows that we're committed to funding our public safety personnel retirement.
10%.
General fund expenditures. So we have different categories: personnel services and personnel benefits, which I combined on this chart, contractual services, commodities, and capital outlay. As you can see from this chart, wages and benefits make up 89% of our general fund, so that's what I'm going to focus on tonight, for a combined total of $65.7 million for fiscal year 18. Contractual services and commodities are budgeted for a combined total of $7.6 million, which makes up 8% of the budget, and capital outlay is $775,000 currently in the general fund budget, and that's 1% of our total expenditures for the general fund. And I go in quite a bit, the budget document has quite a bit of detail on the pensions and the insurance, so I just wanted to cover that a little bit tonight. So from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 18, wages are projected to grow 2%, and that's even with the net increase in FTE. Benefits, however, are projected to increase 12% in 1 year, and that's $3.7 million from the prior year. Workers' compensation insurance is budgeted at $2.3 million in the general fund for fiscal year 18, and that's over $5,000 per employee for workers' comp benefits. Liability insurance, and again, I just want to back up on that. Let me back up to clarify. That's spreading it across all civilians, police, and fire. It's $5,000 per. If you do it based on classification, it's about $15,000 for sworn personnel and less than $1,000 for civilians. But if you just take all of the personnel and spread it across that, it's $5,000 per employee. Liability insurance has seen significant growth from $1.5 million paid by the general fund in fiscal year 15 to $4.9 million paid in fiscal year 18. On a per employee basis, the coverage has increased from $4,000 per employee 4 years ago to $12,000 per employee in fiscal year 18. This is largely driven by legacy police liability claims filed during the past 3 years. And, so hopefully we do have, we continue to struggle with that. And as a result, not only do what we pay out goes up, but also our premiums go up as well. The employee contribution to medical insurance, which includes both health and dental, funded from the general fund, is projected to reach $6.3 million for fiscal year 18. And this is an estimated cost of $15,000 per employee. In fiscal year 15, that cost was $4.8 million, or $13,000 per employee. So over that same time period, 4 years, that's been a 15% increase in the cost of employer-provided health insurance. For fiscal year 2018, the general fund total employer contribution is $14.9 million, an increase of 38% since 15 for all pensions combined. The IMRF general fund expense is budgeted for $1.5 million, and recall our levy was $660,000 for that amount, or $9,000 per employee. In fiscal year 15, the amount per employee was $9,000. So IMRF hasn't really gone up that much per employee. The fire pension fund contribution, which we talked about, was $5.4 million for 18, and that comes out to $47,000 per sworn fire employee. Again, that's $47,000 per sworn fire employee for the fire pension fund. This reflects a large increase over fiscal year 15 when the per employee cost was $34,000. The police pension fund contribution is $8 million for 18, or $53,000 per police employee, having grown from $41,000 per employee in fiscal year 15. So that's really our cost driver, is our insurance and our pension benefits for the upcoming year. General fund headcount. So public safety accounts for 75% of the general fund positions. Some notable changes that I'll run through include a building department adding a code enforcement officer position. There was a code enforcement officer position many years ago that's being reinstated. The position of corporation counsel has been eliminated due to the function being outsourced. The director of policy and projects position has been eliminated, and the beach rangers have been transferred from central services to the police department's general fund budget. The position of Director of Governmental Services is included in the budget to be reinstated, and the addition of a Human Resource Analyst position has been added as well. The Police Department General Fund headcount has a net increase of 2.5 FTE for 18. Part of this increase is due to a clerical tech position being added to the Police Traffic Division that was previously funded from the Enterprise Fund, and the aforementioned transfer of the Beach Rangers and they will be reporting to the neighborhood policing unit. These additions are partially offset by the elimination of an unfilled part-time property evidence manager and an unfilled on-call telecommunicator. I do want to note that we do have, in the special revenue funds, proposal to add a full-time telecommunications supervisor and 2 telecommunicators in the special revenue fund. Public Works has an overall increase of 20 full-time equivalents for fiscal year 18. This is largely due to the motor fuel tax fund having cash flow issues, so we moved those positions out of the motor fuel tax fund and into the general fund.
And I'm sorry, Tiana. Let's be clear. Those positions were already a part of the city's operation.
Correct.
We're moving it from where they were being paid out of, which was motor fuel tax,
Right.
and switching it to the general fund, which it's where it needs to be because it gives us a realistic view of exactly what our budget is. And then we can take those motor fuel tax funds and utilize it as it's supposed to be, not just last year, this year, over the number of years, and that's for our streets and roads. So that's why you see a huge increase. It's not like we went and hired 20 new bodies.
Right.
I want that to be very clear. Hope Alderman, everybody know, we did not hire 20 new bodies for Public Works.
Weren't there only
How
15
many
in that
new
general
bodies
fund?
will we be hiring for Public Works?
Of the motor fuel tax was 15 in total. We also have 4 custodians that are included in this budget. We had some maintenance workers in the water fund that went unfilled for many, many years.
Question. Why, we've always contracted our custodians out. Why would we bring 4 on and pick up benefits and pensions for 4 custodians when we had them on contract before?
We had custodians on staff until 2009, and the custodians that were part of the AFSCME contract at the time, which is now the Local 150 contract, were laid off in 2009 with other layoffs. And that function was insourced.
Can we get a second? Motion by Alderman Villalobos, second by Alderman Seeger to seat Alderman Mozio.
Thank you, Howard.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Pass and carry.
So what is the cost savings of bringing them back as opposed to outsourcing them?
Right, so right now we do have a contract that's cheaper than 4 custodians. The contract is 4 hours per day total for the city hall to be cleaned. Our public works supervisor that has been supervising both the police department facility and city hall has been doing a lot of work that has been he hasn't complained, so it's not like he brought this up, but it's been out of scope. It's been additional hours, and it's the care of both this building and the police facility have not been really adequately done, and he's had to do a lot of work that is probably not appropriate for him to do as one person.
Well, I can see the need to increase the hours, but what I guess I'm concerned about is it cheaper than outsourcing them?
Right. So no, it's not. To just hire the bodies is not cheaper than outsourcing it. The police department did then add an additional person under the contract, which did increase the cost of the contract because the facilities, and Chief is here, in particular the facilities in the jail and some other areas were not being adequately cleaned. So the cost of the contract, I don't know that was ever brought back to City Council to approve the change order, but the cost of the contract did go up. We also identified 4 maintenance workers that had not been filled in over 5 years. So between eliminating those maintenance worker positions and eliminating the contract, that will be budget neutral, if not savings. If the City Council decides not to approve the addition of the custodians, then we will go back out to bid for the contract, and
How
so
much
we can
will it
approach
cost us
that.
in benefits and pensions for those custodians? that we
Right,
have?
so, they're gonna be between $35,000 to $40,000 in salary, so it'll probably be about $65,000 to $70,000 apiece when you add in benefits. But this was prompted due to the lack of quality of services and in addition to some concern about the welfare of the supervisor that was handling the area that was supposed to be managing this. Special revenue funds. These are funds used to account for definite expenditures that are linked to specific revenues that are restricted statutorily. So our total special revenue funds are estimated to have revenues of $19 million and are comprised largely of taxes and intergovernmental revenue, and estimated expenditures of 18.4 for the fiscal year. This does include net transfers of $1 million out and a net deficit then of $463,000. So I'm just going to touch on a few of the funds. Home Rule Sales Tax Infrastructure Fund, as you'll recall, this fund was established when we increased the home rule sales tax to support infrastructure improvements. We have taxes projected at $1.7 million in that fund for fiscal year 18, 5% less than the prior fiscal year, and again, we backed off on that due to the U-line relocation out of state. A transfer of $953,000 will be coming out of that fund to cover the debt service payment of the 2015 and 2016 road bonds, so we were able to abate those. And then the remainder, which is $697,000, has been earmarked to fund an engineering study, including a comprehensive assessment of our city's infrastructure that will result in a 5-year capital improvement plan. The ability to use those funds for that purpose has been run past our bond counsel, Miller Canfield, and he stated that it could be used for that specific purpose. Public safety grants, we have a large assistance to firefighters grant that has been applied for by the fire department, and this grant will be utilized to obtain an ambulance as well as some firefighting turnout gear as well as some training materials. The items requested from the grant include a $210,000 ambulance and $84,000 for replacing an expired hose, replacing expired personal protective equipment, and as well as hazardous materials. There is a match, but there was a fund balance in this fund to handle that. The Sunset Delaney TIF is a tax.
I'm sorry, was there a question?
Okay, I guess my question on the fire department, and you and I have had discussions about this before, is I can't speak for Alderman Valco here, but for me in the 9th Ward, having a jump station is just not acceptable anymore. You know, we are building McGaw Park up. It's getting to the point that we're going to have to say to people like Amazon, when we have a fire out there, do you want us to save the people or do you want us to save the building? It's a joke. It truly is a joke. I'm sitting here paying for 4 custodians' pensions when I can't put police or I can't put fire department people in my jump stations. It's not acceptable, and as a ward that brings in well over 31% of the EAVs for this city, it's just not acceptable. And so I'm still, that's the thorn in my side for that. And I can't speak for your ward, Alderman Valco, but I will tell you in the 9th Ward, not acceptable. Okay, I'm sorry, go on.
The Sunset Delaney TIF, TIF is a tax increment financing district, and this is a TIF that's established on the city's northwest corner. It has projected revenues of $624,000 for fiscal year 18, and $212,000 of that will be transferred to the debt service fund to repay a TIF note issued relative to Woodland Foods, and the remaining funds are earmarked for TIF eligible expenses within the TIF district, which includes some road repair as well as some storm sewer or water sewer, Brian? Lift station repairs. We are going to recommend that this TIF be closed in December. We'll be bringing information forward for that. The TIF growth, or I'm sorry, the EAV growth in this particular district has been substantial, and we've had a handful of projects that have come forward and do not meet the but-for test for TIF financing. So we don't really have a need to keep this TIF open any longer, except to abate the debt service on the Woodland bonds. And had we not abated the Woodland bonds versus the amount of EAV that we lost, that would have gone to our denominator, next year it flips, that we're better off not abating the bonds, letting that EAV come back to our overall EAV for our total tax rate. So we will be recommending that we close that TIF. Therefore, we'll be doing quite a few projects out there to spend those funds down before we close it. The McGaw Park TIF was established at the same time the property was annexed by, it used to be Cardinal Health. Right now, we're under a redevelopment agreement on that. We have, from the county, received that $922,000 will be received in revenues, and the vast majority of those revenues will be going back to bridge development under the redevelopment agreement. Any other questions about special revenue funds? I didn't touch on all of them. Okay. Capital funds, capital improvements are the brick and mortar type investments that are required of municipalities to maintain good working condition of our infrastructure, building, and equipments. As the mayor touched on, there are no revenues for the capital project funds this year. We do have $1 million left in road bonds, and we have $200,000 left from bonds that were issued several years ago and the investment income thereon. So we are appropriating the entire balance. $1 million, again, will go to road repairs, and I believe that Mr. Hewitt and his staff are currently working on bringing forward a bid document for the City Council to consider that money, that it was not put out to bid last in the spring. So, and then $200,000 has been allocated to facility improvements. There were many, many requests for facility improvements, many requests from all of the departments. So we know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. We did allocate $50,000 to our cemetery that we own. There are significant issues with the fencing and the wall that is on the roadway that I'm not sure how much $50,000 will do for that, but hopefully it'll help us make some improvements for that. Another $50,000 has been allocated for salt dome repairs, which is, the pricing came in between $75,000 and $100,000, but we do have some issues we need to address there as well. And then the remaining $100,000 was split between police and fire. Both of them have more than $1 million worth of repairs they could do to their facilities. So I'm sure the chiefs will be bringing forward to the City Council, you know, when they prioritize, and they can bring those bids forward for what those repairs will be. Any questions on that?
So, Mayor, what's your plan if there's only $1 million for roads? Like, how is that going to get determined? You know, as an alderman sitting up here for 6 years, I don't feel I've ever had input on that.
As a part of the budget, we're going to do an assessment on everything, so we'll know exactly what roads need to be done first, when, and project it out over a 5-year period. Once the assessment is completed, I think that's the best time to come and say, this is what our projected plan is. But the assessment needs to be done first. I'm
Okay,
clear.
so
on
you're
that.
not going to spend the $1 million until you get the assessment back, and then you'll prioritize?
No,
Well,
and I'm sorry.
I'm saying that engineering study is going to take a while in the city.
Yeah, and
right?
let me step back. I was really going from your overall, but the 1.2, the $1 million is going to be used from, if I'm not mistaken, from Sunset. Are we doing from Sunset up to Grand Avenue in that business district on Lewis Avenue? That is, yeah,
To Glen Flora.
To Glen Flora. I apologize. To Glen Flora. We're going to use that $1 million to take care of that, because
Okay, so
that's just to
just
get.
so we know how to talk to the people who are like,
Yes.
is my street getting done this year? And
Yes, ma'am. We really believe, after going through that just needs to be done right away. And looking at the amount of traffic that comes into the community in that area, from an image standpoint, that gets a huge amount. As far as globally and long-term, I think it's so important, to your point, Alderman May, that we know where we're going, not just this year, next year, over a 5-year period, and that we can budget for that. Because at this point, we don't. We simply have no idea where we're going when it comes to our infrastructure of our city, not just above ground, but underground. So doing the streets in anybody's world right now, we can come back and bust that whole street up if there's a water main break, and as we've all seen. So,
might be preaching to the choir there, but okay.
yeah, I know. But my thing is here is, let's do the assessment on that. come back, and then all of us take a look at exactly what the assessment says. And I personally like to say, hey, this is where all of us can go from here with your input, every alderman's input about roads, our infrastructure as a whole.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The study's going to cover,
Alderman Valco.
Just a comment so the public and those that are going to be watching this understand what's going on. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to be off maybe $1 million here or $1 million there. I think 2 years ago, we went out for $8 million. We had a 3-year plan of $32 million for roads.
when we first increased the home rule sales tax,
Correct.
the plan was based on the amount of money we could borrow. It wasn't based on an engineering study.
Correct.
Right.
But I mean, we've sort of forecasted like $32 million. $8 million the first year, $12 million last year.
Right, and we ended up doing 7 and 7 instead.
Correct. And then we were supposed to do another $12 million this year for a total of around $32 million. But we did not go out for bonds this year. So that's why we only have $1 million to spend in a city that probably needs about $20 million. So bear with us. We just don't have it. And eventually, as the mayor says, we'll take a quick peek at different wards. And I know I put my list in a while ago, and we'll just hope for the best and see what comes out. But that's the reason that there's no money, because we went out for bonds, and they're all done, okay?
And
Go ahead,
the assessment's going to include alleys, sidewalks, water and sewer lines, storm sewer, everything. So what the plan is to bring in an engineering firm to do this study. It will take some time. But then when we bring our budget proposal to you next year, we'll also bring a 5-year capital improvement plan that will also be subject to city council approval and adoption. It will include not only the projects and projected costs to be done over those 5 years, including buildings, including vehicles that are capital in nature, but also the funding mechanism for that, so that we fully understand if we need to issue bonds or if we need to cut back on operations, how we're going to pay for that as well. And I don't know if we've mentioned it or not, but we do plan on doing a similar assessment of all the city-owned buildings. And we are looking at our fleet management system as well, because our vehicles are, some of our vehicles, a lot of our vehicles need to be replaced. But you can't do it all at once. It would be too expensive. Debt service funds, this is where we pay for our general obligation bonds and also our one special service assessment bond that we have out at Fountain Square. And this is where the news gets better. Our revenues for next year are $10.6 million. That's tax revenues and the special assessments coming in. Our expenditures, which is our principal and interest payments and some fees, bank fees, are $11.8 million for a total deficit of $1.165. However, that $1.165 is being transferred in from the home rule sales tax fund, as well as the Sunset Delaney to abate those taxes. So these funds are good, and this is where the story is pretty good. As of May 1st, 2017, our total principal outstanding is $61.2 million for our GO bonds, and for our special assessments, $1.9. And this shows by fiscal year. So I'll just kind of run down what bonds we still have outstanding.
Yes.
And that's listed in detail in the book. We have our special service assessment bonds that we issued in 2005 for Fountain Square. In 2009, we issued bonds to create our working cash fund. In 2010, we issued bonds for a separate wrongful imprisonment lawsuit, the Dominguez lawsuit. We did receive back a lot of money from the insurance company, but not enough. So we still have some bonds outstanding for that. In 2010, we issued bonds for several capital projects that were completed from 2010 till 2013. In 2012, we refinanced a capital appreciation bond that had been issued initially to purchase what we casually call the casino property out at Fountain Square. Those bonds are still outstanding. In 2012, we issued TIF bonds for the Woodland Foods project. And then in 2015 and 2016, we issued 2 separate sales tax bond issues, which are those road bonds that we talked about. And in 2015, we refunded the bonds that had been issued for the Genesee Theater. So as you can see from this chart, in about 3 fiscal years, our debt service declines and then rapidly drops off. So if we do go back out to the market to issue new bonds, even if this freeze passes the Senate freezing our tax. I'm not sure if it's our tax levy or our tax rate. I'm hoping it's tax rate. But we will be able to backfill bonds. So what we would do is issue bonds, and you have your principal payments balloon toward the end. Okay, so we do have flexibility as far as debt issuance in about a year or two. Our enterprise funds is where we account for our water and our motor vehicle parking systems. So we have $15 million in revenues projected. Most of those are water and sewer. We also charge fees for our parking lots and also the meters and our one garage. Expenditures in these are personnel, maintenance cost, as well as capital projects and debt service on the bonds related. So after the $12 million that we have projected in expenses, we do have a surplus of $3 million. When we passed the ordinance to increase water rates every May 1st, at that time the projection was $2.5 to $3 million should be your surplus so that you don't have to continue issuing bonds. If you'll recall, most of you were on the council. We did issue 2 back-to-back bond issues to make much-needed repairs to the water plant. So when we did do that, part of what the market demanded was not only do you have to have sufficient coverage to repay this debt, we want to see you start generating a surplus so that you have money in your savings account, so to speak, to make repairs when they're necessary and you don't have to continue going to market. So this is a positive trend in these funds. And in fact, we have a higher bond rating on our water bonds than we do our general obligation bonds, and this is why. We do anticipate that our revenues, let's see, 92% of our revenues do come from water sewer, so we anticipate $13.7 million in water and sewer charges. This is slightly lower than the budget, but it is an uptick from the year-end estimates. The tax revenues that are shown on here are related to home rule sales tax that has to be transferred in, and we're budgeting $137,000. The reason that home rule sales tax has to be transferred in is to cover the debt service on the parking garage bonds. But for that transfer, the parking garage would be operating at the parking fund, would be operating at a deficit. Between all the paid lots and the garage, we anticipate $773,000 in revenues total. We are seeing a decline in that. A lot of this is related to Lake County. They're nearing their completion of parking for their jurors, and we also did reduce the county's use of our garage. We did sell our second garage to CLC last year, so that is a decline of revenues. However, we did take those proceeds and pay off some of the bonds on the other garage. So.
We just own 2 garages now?
Just one.
Just the same one area?
Correct. We have several surface lots, but just the one garage.
All right.
If you know any buyers, give them my number.
Sure. It took us forever to get the COC. I was always for that.
Right. The internal service funds, and these funds are really just set up to pass through payments for insurance-related matters. We had several years of running in the red in these funds. We had huge deficits, and that finally is correcting itself. Revenues are going to be $8.9 million, expenditures $8.9. The $900,000 transfer out is related to insurance recovery that we received in fiscal year 17 on one of our wrongful incarceration lawsuits. So that's actually going into the working cash fund, and then that 2.5 is coming out to go to the general fund. So that's a good thing there. And there are more details about our insurance, but we kind of covered that already. Then our fiduciary funds. This is our restricted use funds. Police and fire pension make up the majority of this. They are managed by independent boards. This is also where we have our stabilization fund that we also call our working cash or our rainy day fund. The reason it's in this category is because it is restricted by resolution. Also, when we established this fund by borrowing money and issuing bonds, the rating agencies at the time strongly recommended that we restrict the funds. So hence the reason it's in this category. So our revenues are just under $30 million. Again, that is made up of employer contributions, employee contributions, and investment income to the police and fire pension funds. 8.5 million is going to the police pension and 5.9 for fire. Of that, 13.4 is from property taxes, and to answer Alderman Taylor's question, just under $1 million of that is coming from our gaming revenues. Annual expenditures include the disbursement of retirement benefits, beneficiary payments, disability benefits, and that's estimated to be $12.8 million for fiscal year 2018 for both funds combined. Professional services related to the management of the funds, including investment, advisory, and legal services, will be just under $500,000 for the fiscal year. As I already stated, we anticipate making a $2.5 million lump sum payment from our working cash fund to settle a police liability claim. As the expense is tied to the police department, the money will be transferred to the general fund and the payment appropriately recorded. Again, this is being offset by $900,000 insurance carrier recovery from the prior year. There will also be 2 non-recurring expenses and permanent transfers out. Again, these will have to come back to City Council for approval under our stabilization fund policy. The $2.5 million was already made because that was contractually committed as part of that lawsuit. One of the payments is $150,000 contributed to the Waukegan Public Library, and this is replacing State of Illinois grant revenue, and that was included in their budget. There's also a permanent transfer out of $70,000 to a new fund, the Planning Grant Fund. If we receive a grant that was applied for the Washington Street corridor planning, then that would be our match. If the grant is not awarded, then those funds would not be required. Then we also have $30,000, if needed, would come out of the working cash fund to help subsidize Scoop the Loop, Scoop the Genesee for this annual event. In the past, we've subsidized this through the general fund. However, given our $3 million deficit, we thought it would be more transparent to put this in the working cash fund and bring that before Finance Committee for authorization. So our next steps, we do have the community forum Saturday, June 3rd at 9 a.m. Everyone's welcome to attend that, of course. If there's an additional committee of the whole that the alderman would like to have, we can do that. Currently, we're on a 90-day rollover appropriation, so the city does need to adopt an appropriation ordinance before the end of July. Once the fiscal year, once that is adopted, then we'll be able to start proceeding with city business. Right now, contracts and hiring are being really held at an operational minimum. I do want to point out in the back of the book is a line item comparison. It is the Larry Tempest report. We are calling it in the finance department. And it has, we ran this, it was actual numbers through April 30th, which are subject to change because we haven't even started our audit yet. The fiscal year 18 budget, which is being presented, and then the 17 amended budget as well.
So,
Is that the tab that says appendix?
Correct.
It should say LBT appendix?
Right.
I got a couple of things, Tina.
Alderman Villalobos.
So this is just like, these first 2 are just grammatical things. In the fiduciary fund, page 3, instead of saying scoop the loop, we should omit the loop and said scoop Genesee.
Okay.
Because we don't use scoop the loop anymore. We can't, can we?
I
don't think we can.
I don't know.
It's scoop the Genesee. Also in the general fund, there's the word truck is missing, page 20. When it says fire, and then it should be say fire truck. And talking about that. Those are 2 simple ones, just grammatical things. There's a couple other ones, but I forgot to make note of them.
You can feel free to email those to me.
I'll have to go through and reread the stuff.
Okay.
But,
And I'll send you the draft next year.
yeah.
We can use all the proof, the numbers tie out.
Mm-hmm.
But
Also, there was a couple of things I just had questions about. For legal, we have 444. So this is on page 1.
right, I
The
had put
appendix.
that in before the contract was approved.
Okay.
So we can either move that around or, just because it's in the line item doesn't give us authorization to spend it above what council approved.
Right,
So those
okay.
funds could be allocated elsewhere.
Okay, there's that. And also I found another thing in the appendix regarding the deputy city clerk. It's on page 4 in the city clerks section, but also on page 73 in the motor vehicle.
Right. In prior years, under the prior administration, the parking supervisor was given the title of deputy clerk,
Okay.
and he has been reallocated back to the parking supervisor position.
Right, so the secondary deputy city clerk and the parking vehicle, is that going to get omitted then?
Not if it's in the prior year. We show what happened in the prior year.
Well, this has fiscal year 18 budget, and it says 66,000.
Can you tell me what page you're on?
Page 73 of the appendix. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, about 8th line down.
Right, that should go in parking lot supervisor. I'll make that transfer
Okay.
for the budget, for the fiscal year 18 budget.
Okay.
That'll go to parking lot supervisor.
And then will that line item get omitted then? Because it won't be
It will
existing
for
anymore?
18, but when we show prior year, because that's where the expense actually hit, was that line item in
Right.
prior year.
Okay.
Until those prior years fall off of the reports, you'll continue
It'll still be
seeing it.
there. Okay, just want to make sure that's clear. Also, that was that. Oh, I also had a question regarding, on page 74 of the appendix, for the revenues. This is the middle section, miscellaneous revenue. It says about 47,000. Is there any way to differentiate
I
that?
can send you the line items of previous years for that.
Yeah, because that seems kind of high to have just a
It
miscellaneous
includes-
tag too.
It includes several of our paid lots.
Right, okay. Yeah,
In
that just seems
fact-
like a high number.
Right, and we did, I was talking to the supervisor in the parking today, and we did talk about when we do the deposits, breaking that out more
Okay.
specifically and setting up additional line
I
items.
think it would be helpful considering actually like the downtown parking, just a big sticky point for business owners, residents,
Right.
and everybody, so.
For example, the concessions, the amount, I think we get $250 a month, I think, from the business that works out of the Metro parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
That gets deposited into downtown parking instead of concessions. So
Right.
we will make that change to make that more specific.
Okay. Let's see, hold on. And I also had a question about the Director of Government Services position that we're putting up. It says it's 120. This is on page 1 of the appendix. I'm reading that correct as 120 for this upcoming year, correct? 120,000?
Right, when we discussed this with the mayor, the finance department discussed this with the mayor,
Mm-hmm.
he had indicated that he was going to have at least a 90-day holding pattern before he would recruit and fill for that position.
Right. But
So we didn't
that-
budget for the entire amount.
But looking at our wage scale, would that put at a person at tier 1, step 5 approximately? Is that a good starting space for that? I don't,
That's
Alderman,
not
we
really a
can't hear you
finance.
down here. Could you speak?
sorry.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the 120,000, that puts it at, could consider our 2016 page, our wage scale, that puts it as a tier 1, step 5 salary approximately?
2016?
Well, that's the wage scale that we have most recently, right? So that puts us a tier 1, step 5. And my question is, does a job like this come in as a tier 1, step 1? Like, I'm not clear on the steps and how those,
That's really.
get differentiated?
We just plug in numbers in the finance department.
Right.
As to what would be the appropriate salary based on what candidates are presented and what their credentialing is. That's going to be something that the mayor and HR will handle. All we did was put in an assumption in the budget, similar to the line item for corporation counsel.
Right.
We just put in some funding amount. It doesn't necessarily, that means the amount that's going to get spent.
okay. And then, it's legal. I did have a question also about the special revenue fund on page 9. It has the salt amount as $440,000.
Right.
We spend that much on salt annually?
Yes, we do.
Oh, wow. Do we have And I guess this question would be directed to Mike for down the line. Can you find out how much surplus we have? Because that was a question I had last time we appropriated money for the contract for the salt. Tom wasn't here. He couldn't answer that question I had, but I wonder how much surplus we had. We had a down year this year in terms of snow, so I'm assuming there's a surplus in salt. So if we could figure that one out, that'd be helpful.
Alderman, when we come to that salt, and something I've experienced over the last 18 years, it is best to have too much salt and not enough.
Agreed.
I'm here to tell you that.
Agreed.
So I
think I just think it'd be beneficial to us to know where we stand in terms of like surplus.
Typically, and we've really, over the last, I'm going to say 10, 15 years, from a salt standpoint, we've done a pretty good job. But I rather have in dollar amount overage than what we need. If I'm not mistaken, was it 2013? We had a real bad snow throughout the Midwest, half of the country, where the salt amount went up 3 times the amount. Luckily, we had enough, but that only carried us through, I think, one up to the last snowstorm, and we had to go out and buy, and I think that cost us double the amount that we had for the entire year. So, yeah, we couldn't get the state bid. So,
I'm just trying to get some numbers attached to
I hear you
this,
right there, but if we got $440,000 in the bin, and I don't know how much an assessment you really can do, how much salt you have. I think what we can do, from my experience, is look out at the bin and say we're quarter full, half full, and that gives us an estimate of where we need to be for the upcoming year.
Right.
So I would caution, everybody else probably should know, including you.
Yeah.
That salt, I'd rather for that bin to be overrun than to have a problem with not having salt for the spread throughout the city, any event of a snowstorm. Yeah.
I absolutely agree that we should make sure we have enough salt. But I just want to try to attach numbers to something that's so nebulous like that to me.
I agree with you.
All we got to do is just take the amount that we have, calculate it against the value present day, and say we have this much in salt right now in terms of...
It does get audited and inventoried at the end of every
Does it?
fiscal year.
Okay.
So this,
I must have missed that line then.
since we do have new auditors, they'll go physically out
Okay.
and look at it. And we do a last in, first in method
Okay.
for valuation of the salt.
Okay. And then also in the appendix, page 1, there is the mayor's office. I was curious about this one. Let's see, where'd you go? There's a line item that says liquor stipend, $10,000.
Right.
Also in the city clerk's office, similar descriptor, and for $4,000.
That's actually the parking stipend for the clerk's office. But since the last 4 digits are the same, our financial system gives it the same title. So under salary ordinance, the mayor does get a $10,000 liquor stipend, and the city clerk does get the parking stipend of whatever it is in here for the budget. You said 4,000?
But is that different from the parking stipend back at page 73 again with the motor vehicle parking lot? There's a parking stipend for $7,000 there. Is that a different parking stipend then?
That parking stipend the parking stipend's in there. It's going to be proposed to be eliminated because the parking functions have moved to the police department, and then there would be a stipend to swap that out with for the clerk's office to take on some liquor duties.
So,
however, as the salary ordinance is currently still in place, the clerk will continue receiving the parking stipend. The mayor receives the liquor stipend, so we budgeted for both the plan and what is also in the salary ordinance. Whatever the aldermen vote on the salary ordinance to do regarding those stipends is what the individuals will get paid. But we have to include in the budget for both the current ordinance and then also what I understand will be a proposal presented to the aldermen.
Just so people know, that's liquor commissioner, not, that's that you said, no one's, we said just liquor stipend, it's liquor commissioner.
Correct.
By statute, the mayor's the only one that can be the, we're not buying liquor. That's not for parties, that is by state statute, The mayor is the only person that can be the liquor commissioner of the
Thank
city
you
of
for
Waukegan. I
clarifying
want to
that.
make sure I clarified that. I saw some faces out there. No, we're not
Yeah.
buying that much liquor, people, trust me.
I know, I was like,
I don't drink that much now.
Yeah, no.
yeah.
So we have the line items there and the funding there. We
Okay.
only pay what is under salary ordinance when we do payroll.
Okay.
So whatever happens, if, either of those stipends are moved or changed, the funding will be there, and that's all people will get paid.
Okay. Okay.
It's just a plan. This
Yeah,
isn't
I was just,
Bible.
yeah, the stipends was just kind of, like, I wasn't really sure what those stipends were
In
utilized for.
previous years, we didn't even break out the stipends. Now we break it out
Okay.
and have it shown separately, similar to the expense accounts for
Okay.
the alderman and the mayor, the treasurer, and the clerk.
And then the last one I have is the elected official expense account.
Right.
That one for previous year says 70, is like $70.
We,
Again, page 1,
right, we set up that line item
okay,
this year, this
Okay.
fiscal year. So that's just a charge back from the first paycheck that was issued in May that had income related in April to it. So we
Okay.
haven't changed the amount that's being paid, we're just accounting for it separately.
okay. And then that's going to be for 19,000. And then our city clerk gets a 5,000, okay,
Clerk, treasurer, and all the aldermen.
Aldermen.
And the mayor.
all right. Okay, I guess I never realized in these 2 years it was 19,000 for the mayor. A little bit more detailed this year I am. Okay,
It was just broken out. That's why.
Correct.
all right.
It's broken out. That's all.
Okay. That's all I have within the book, and I got one last comment, and I'm going to address this to you, Mayor. As we look at the library with that $150,000 as a one-time, I think we should really look at having that be a part of their budget going forward.
No, sir. We had a conversation with the library already. We're going to be working with them as we move forward. There were some things that went on with the state that they were fine. There were some things that happened with the state of Illinois that
Right.
needed them to be that needed some help, and that's where we're at this year. They've already assured us that they're going to be looking at their budget as we look at ours, and if we can assist them in the future, then we can. But what we don't want to do is say that's going to automatically be something we give to them, because they get an assessment as we do.
Right.
And they've done an awesome job at budgeting. Unfortunately, through the state of Illinois, and one of the grants that they have, it fell short. I like to say, and I should say no, sir. What I want to say is we want to work with them as it is needed because of the things that they're doing over there. Award-winning library, awesome staff. They've done some upgrades within their budget.
Right.
This year was $150,000 short because some things that was missing through the library. I think it's our responsibility to help that library out. That's part of an asset to the city of Waukegan and part of the image that we portray. But from a standpoint of just saying putting it in their budget, I don't think we want to get into that process at this time. I think it's as needed, or it's some special projects they're doing that they were obligated by other people. Make sure we touch base with our CFO. As you can see, we have some things we have to correct within ourselves. So, but we'll listen, we're going to work. I think I'm saying me as mayor, but as the alderman group are going to work with our library, with our school districts and others who have an impact on making Waukegan great. So I don't want to say, no, we're not going to do it, but I certainly didn't want to put out there that you have $150,000 the city's going to give you every time. Because I have right now 2 aldermen saying right now about, fire department. And so we don't want to really send that message. The message is we're here to help as needed when things, things get short. As we have a rainy day fund, and if I'm not mistaken, we're taking this portion out of our rainy day fund. So we don't want to say our rainy day fund is for that method. It's for what is designed for rainy day. And I hope we all agree with that today. I understand your passion for it, and I don't even blame you for bringing it up. But I want to be very clear, not only to us, but also to the public. We are assisting as needed because it is necessary for the full operations of our community, and that's what we're here for. But thank you anyway. It was a great try.
Oh, I'll keep trying.
Nothing wrong with
I'll
that.
keep trying.
I know you will.
All right, well, that's all I had listed for today. So thank you.
Any other alderman? I've seen some hands raised.
Yes, sir.
Alderman Valco.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
You and I had a meeting this morning, well over an hour and 10 minutes, and it was a very pleasurable meeting. I relayed my disappointment, my grievances, my thoughts on several matters, and I didn't want you to be not knowing what's going to come out of my mouth here now. The night of your swearing in, you said you weren't going to make any appointments, you weren't going to make any changes, you were having the transition team going to look at everything, though it would be forthcoming. Well, they came at about 8 or 8:30 the next morning on May 2nd, right after you were sworn in. I don't have a problem with changing people around. What I have a problem with is that some of our employees receive letters, in an effort to align our resources with ongoing demands of the employees and citizens of the city of Waukegan. It has become necessary to implement several personnel changes among our administrative staff. As a result of these personnel changes, your position will be eliminated effective May 15th. Your hard work and dedication to the city is highly valuable. Therefore, we have determined that you are able to extend an offer to you of blah, blah. The next morning at 8 o'clock, 8:30, whatever it was, there was a few people, you and I, and again, I commend you. You must have got word that I was a little upset the very first week because you called me on a Friday. And I told you, I says, you know, I'm glad you called, Mayor, because I was going to call to get a face-to-face with you the following week, which was about a week and a half ago. And we had a nice conversation, almost 45, 50 minutes on the phone. And I told you I didn't appreciate the way some of our people were being handled. I didn't appreciate the $30,000 and $34,000 cuts in annual salary. And you said, Bill, that didn't happen. It was $9,000. And I said, Mayor, you must be misinformed. And you and I talked today, and you said, yeah, you were misinformed. Okay.
Correction, I wasn't misinformed, Bill. I want to say I made the mistake because there was a salary that I looked at, not all. Okay. So it wasn't misinformed. Okay. I'll take full responsibility. Staff they let me know exactly I was just looking at one particular salary, and that's where that was.
One of our employees was cut $38,000. $38,000 off of your salary. Another one was cut $28,000, and the one employee you and I were talking about was only cut $7,000. Only.
Yes.
I don't know how many people can take a $35,000 to $40,000 cut in their salary and live like they're supposed to, or accustomed to, let me put it that way. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with a letter coming out before the council has even looked at the budget and says your position's going to be eliminated. And it's in the budget. Not possibly be eliminated, depending on council approval, but you're out in the cold. And if you don't want to be out in the cold, we're going to give you a chance to stay with the city at $38,000 less. Ludicrous.
But Alderman, if you take a look, that's probably one position, and that was, as we talked about in the leadership forum.
And I thought, and you have my thoughts on this again.
Yes.
And some of the aldermen and I have talked also, so they know my thoughts. But I just want to get my thoughts out there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the reason being, I had heard long before, during the campaign, that you were thinking about getting a chief of staff. My thoughts, and you and I've told you twice, that we don't need a chief of staff. So I was thinking, at that time, how are we going to pay for a new chief of staff? Probably, I figured it $120, and Alderman Villalobos said it on the head. It was about $120,000 that they're budgeting for. How are we going to pay for all this stuff? Well, you got 3 employees, 38, 20, so 40, 68,000, and then another 7, and then the other transfers and stuff. I'm going to go through some of the stuff, and again, you and I had this conversation today, that if we're here till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, I want to get this all aired out. I've got to get it off my chest. I know you said you want to go line by line. I don't want to do that. I just have a bunch of stuff. I'm a firm believer, you treat your employees correctly, you reward them, you don't come in the very next morning with a letter and said, here, take it or leave it, and take a cut of almost $40,000. Wow. It doesn't sit well with me, and it's unfathomable. And then I look, that's step one here. Then I look at the chart, Tina, on page 9 of the red tab, ma'am. It's under organizational chart. I'm sorry, what? Page 9, the organizational chart, past with the red tab, executive overview. I went into the collector's office last week to do something, and then it was almost like a ghost town down there. I see on the chart here, city collector in the blue on your left, 1 staff accountant, 2 clerical tech, 5.5, 7.5 people. One of those people went to the clerk's office because, let me finish. One of those individuals resigned on the upcoming turnaround, and one of those people went to finance. So
Alderman, this is after those transfers.
this is after those changes? So you're
Correct.
telling me that there's still 7.5 people in the collector's office?
There is one vacancy, but yes,
The one that quit, that is correct.
correct.
And it had nothing to do with the changes, Alderman, just be clear. She had already given 2 weeks' notice.
Correct.
Okay, but it sounds like you said because of the
But-
changes.
This is after those changes.
Yeah. Yeah, the young lady,
I hate to put you on the spot, sir.
who?
Mr. Torres, how many people do you have in your office?
Right now?
Yes, sir.
Well, right now I have 4.5.
That's what my figures relate. And you're telling me that he's got
George, Juan, Juanrica, Betty, Migdalia,
And Jessica.
Jessica, and Barb part-time, so that's 5.5, and Natalie's position.
Yeah, position.
Yeah, Natalie's position, but I'm talking about currently, there's only 4.5 people in there. And to your thinking, and correctly so, it would be 5.5 if Natalie was still there.
Right, so this is
But-
after those transfers.
Okay,
Right.
but so he's already down 2 people. Then I see you've got an extra person up there,
Correct.
okay? Then I see, and the reason I'm saying that is because I went there and I heard from different people that the city, the parking tickets got, or excuse me, the city stickers got taken away from the clerk's office and put over to, I don't even know where
The collector's office to
the
police
collector's
traffic.
office? The collector's office, where'd the city stickers get put to?
Police traffic,
Traffic?
correct.
Okay. So then I'm thinking, well, how did that come about? On whose authority did that happen? And the reason I'm saying that, none of us up here voted for that. And do you know why? Because it's in the city ordinance. Section 21-252, that's done by the clerk's office, excuse me, done by the collector's office. So all of a sudden, we're violating the ordinance of the city of Waukegan to take something away and put it in someplace else. We didn't vote for that. I'm not trying to put anybody on a spot here. I just
No,
want to
Alderman, it's
figure
never
out
about, Alderman.
How did this stuff
Alderman.
come about?
Alderman, stop. It's not about putting anybody on the spot. If there is an issue that collectively the legislative body has, put it out there. Don't look at it as putting it on the spot. My feelings are not hurt because you're bringing them out. These are issues that is on, you just said, is on your chest. Get it off your chest. Then we can talk about it and move on. The decisions that have always been made, since I've been 18 years in Alderman, now less than 30 days as an administrator, are what we think are the best functional ways to run an organization. I clearly said we're going to reorganize the organization to fit today's. I'm going to repeat, to fit today's management style that we can move forward in the community. Now, if you think that that's not right and you have something there, why don't you put it out there, write it down, we come back, discuss it, and move forward. I don't want you ever, Alderman, please, never think that I think that I'm obeying or disobeying orders or not following. It's not. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not the Messiah up here. I'm here to govern in the best interest of the city of Waukegan. And if there's something that you have identified, put it out there, Alderman, please. I'm begging you, put it out there. Okay, we're going to write it down. We're going to assess it. But as far as operating this community, moving those functions to those departments makes sense. That's all. So if something we have to clean up on the back end, and believe me, after 18 years of being on the city council, we've done many things where we've done and had to clean up on some back end. So I thank you for bringing it to my attention. I appreciate you. That's what you're here for, to not only to help myself, but to make sure from legislatively and policy that we're doing it the right way. That's all. So please don't apologize if you put me on the spot. You're never putting me on the spot. Never. I would never be put on the spot for the betterment of this community.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, though.
Oh, I'm not done.
All right.
So the chief of staff that I heard that was coming about,
Yes, sir.
it's Director of Governmental Services. And then I see 2 community liaison officers, and you and I discussed this morning, so
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not talking out of turn here. That you told me that an individual was already hired. I did not know that. I had another alderman call me 2 weeks ago and said, do we have a community liaison officer? Well, I had heard we're going to hire one. He says, well, it would be nice that if we knew, in case we have any problems, we could give that number to that individual. That was not in that's in the budget that we're looking at now, but that was never discussed. It was never done anything that made us aware of anything that was going to come about with this. And I just have a real problem hiring somebody at $120,000 a year, if that's what we're going to do, and cutting 2 employees by 25 or 30%.
Let's be clear, because it sounded was good. The 120,000 not for no community liaison. Be clear on that one. But the way you ran it into the way it was ran into, it sounded like the 120,000.
Probably going to get what, about 65 apiece?
Who is that, sir?
The community liaison.
Yeah, I think we projected it between, yes, between that 50 to 60, yeah.
So we've
Yes,
got
sir.
2, that's $130, another $120, that's $250, and we're taking it away from current employees to give to new hires. That's what upsets me.
And I'm sorry that you looking at it that way, but that's not the reason we're doing it. It never has been. Now, Bill, you've been here long enough. We have shifted around budgets, bodies or positions, but there was never the reason to get rid of them, to add this. That's not my objective. Never has. This is all about setting up an organization or reorganizing the organization for the management style not only that I have, but I think is in the best interest of moving the community forward. That's what this is all about. Let's be clear on that. I know you have your reasons. I'm giving you mine.
I have no problem with something like that, as long as we don't take it on the backs of our current employees.
Sir, let's be clear. No one appreciates the staff of the city of Waukegan more than Sam Cunningham. Nobody. I've done it as a legislator. Now as an administrator, it's more appreciative now. Some of the brightest minds on the face of this earth sits behind the desk that govern this community. Now, to suggest that I would do anything to hurt them, and the mere fact of bringing someone on, I will take offense to it, but I know that's not what you really meant. What we have done in a certain department, we're looking for someone who's going to be the leader of that department. Period. I've discussed that with them because that's a critical aspect of running this city. I said that to you, and I'm saying it now. Now, in the past, let's be clear, when mayors have come on, they've terminated people without notice, walked them out of here with police escorts. That's what happened in the past at the city of Waukegan. What have I done? I've said, you are a valued person, but we need something that's going to jumpstart a certain department. So I went into the sport mode that I'm in. Whomever can fit the bill of being the leader, and though in not just in one department, but throughout the city of Waukegan. And that's who gets the job. So, we're talking about the lives of people. I've never even entertained a thought of putting anybody out on the streets. Never. Other mayors have walked them out of here with no jobs and their families. I'm looking at the skill set of the individual and saying, this is where you will be successful. That's an assessment that I've made over less than 30 days. As an assessment is going to be made over our entire city, a part of this budget. So while I appreciate what you're saying and defending some of the greatest minds, I think, on the face of this earth who have helped govern our community, I would ask you to please let this process take place, and I promise you that you will be beyond happy of what we're going to produce, not for me, not for you, but for the very citizens of this community. And that's where I'm at with it, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but
Everybody has their own opinion. So
and I agree, Bill.
We agree to disagree.
I know that, and we smiled about it.
I know. Ms. Migelski, on page 21 of the white tab, the general fund, to dovetail on what the mayor was talking about, it says here, senior planners 3. You got it? Okay, but we have 4 right now. Are one of those people going to become the economic development manager?
This is what we budgeted. That's really something that HR, the mayor's office, and the planning department will come to, I assume, in short order. But this is what's in the budgeted plan. If there continues to be 4 senior planners, then there would be adequate funding for those 4. Because the economic development manager has funding higher than a senior planner.
I'm sorry, you've lost me. Under the auspice of what? If we decide to have 4, then we would take that economic development manager off?
Correct. There's 4 slots there. What we budgeted was an economic development manager and 3 senior planners. So if you have 4 positions that are less than overall the budget, then that can be accommodated.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, man. I'm going to be a while. I'm sorry. Page 17, under the general fund, I saw Mr. Maybe he's gone. Is Mr. Marion still here? Oh, there he is. You and I had discussions a year ago, 6 months ago, that you wanted to see, and I had agreed with you, to maybe get a HVAC inspector and an electrical inspector here. We had conversations a long time ago about this, and I don't see anything in the budget. We did increase code enforcement officer by 1, and I assume that's to pick up where Mr. Booth passed away, or is that in addition to that?
I think that's in addition to, right?
In addition?
Correct.
Yes.
So how many will we have total?
Yeah.
8.
But if we picked up 1, that's 8.
Correct. You had 7.
You'll have to backfill it.
We had,
Okay.
correct. Mr. Booth's position would be backfilled plus an additional code
Okay.
enforcement.
So, and my question to you is, sir, did you even request anything like this? I mean, because we were adamant, you and I, about the electrical inspector, about some other stuff. I know in the synopsis of the budget, in the narrative, it said that budget discussions were held with department heads, and we took what we thought we were going to take, and I don't know what else happened.
I actually substantially
In answer to your question, Alderman, I asked for substantially more personnel. I asked for 2 code enforcement officers on top of what was already existing at the time. Since when one of our employees passed away, what the goal was to get 9 code enforcement officers plus a supervisor, so there would be 9 in each ward. I also asked for an electrical inspector, an HVAC inspector, and 2 admins. The technical side is something that is going to have to be addressed by this council eventually, and it's going to come very soon. And here's the scenario. I'm retiring, okay? Between now and October 1st, I'm retiring, okay? What that means is you don't just lose your building commissioner, you lose your HVAC inspector. And we have a part-time electrical inspector. I know you aldermen, and God bless you all, love code enforcement. Code enforcement is about 25% of the building department's job. The building department's job is building, construction. Look around. We're stretched thin. My time in the office is 60%. I'm in the field for 40% of the day doing field inspections, which is fine. I can do it. I'm a great guy with that. I can do both. And I'm a guy who works from home, so it's easy. But I'm retiring. I mean, this is a fact. I'm putting it all out here, okay? Before October 1st of this year, I will be retired. So your building commissioner's gone and your HVAC inspector's gone. You have a part-time electrical inspector basically on call. The plumbing inspector and I had a discussion this morning. He is retiring October 18. So you have to look at your building department, who does inspections, plan reviews, meets with developers. This is important stuff to continue the construction in the city. I understand all your stuff on grass and garbage and graffiti. That's part of it. But the technical side has been neglected since the layoffs. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I've been up here every year. I've talked about it. I've made our budget work for 6 years. Okay, I'm retiring. So I will do everything I can to transition to make this work. But keep in mind, when I go, it's 2. It's not just 1. Any other questions? It's my little thing there.
2 slots on the.
I fill the spot of the HVAC inspector, which by life safety is a state required inspector. You have to have 4 inspectors. You have to have a building inspector, a HVAC inspector, an electrical inspector, and an
Plumber.
and a plumbing inspector. I'm sorry. Thank you.
We have to have that.
Have to have it.
We don't.
At this point in time, we do. But our electrical inspector is part-time, and there is work for a full-time inspector. The technicals are very intricate to this city's development.
So we can't expand McGaw Park if we don't have all these people. Like, I mean, these are new businesses moving in, and we need these people.
We need trained technical inspectors.
And how much did you bring in last year in building permit fees?
Right off the top of my head, I don't know. I'm sure Ms. Smelsky, do you have that at your fingers? I mean, we're a self-sustaining department. Agreed? No? Okay. With fees and permit fees and everything, we are a self-sustaining department, and I'll stand by that.
Thank you, sir.
Novelka, can I make a few comments, or are you still going? You still going?
One more.
Okay.
One more question. And actually, it's a plug for a new individual, believe it or not. I've been thinking quite a bit about this. Mayor and I had conversations about this. It's been budgeted for 2 deputy chiefs. I would like to go along and have this changed to 3 deputy chiefs for the police department. And the reason being, I had a meeting, after the conversation with the mayor, I did approach the chief of police. We had a meeting for about an hour. And he explained some of the stuff that both I knew what both deputy chiefs do. He expanded on that, some new projects coming up. And I agree with him. that we should have, I'm sorry, thank you. And I agree with them that we should have 3 deputy chiefs on the police department side. And for those of you that say, oh my God, he's talking about not hiring people and now all of a sudden he wants to make a 3rd position. I don't know what the deputy chiefs are making, maybe $120. Again, seems to be like a famous number around here. But from when a lieutenant or a commander gets promoted to deputy chief, it's not that much money. It's not like we're hiring somebody else out.
No.
It's just, it's a pay increase and that's it. So we're not paying somebody a brand new $120,000 if you get my drift. We're not taking somebody off the street and just making a position for $120. But I'd like that to be considered. I know I was against it at first, but after some serious discussions and serious thinkings, I think that we should have this to 3 deputy chiefs. And believe it or not, gentlemen and ladies, that's all I have. Now, next one up.
Before you go, Alderman Moore, Alderman Taylor, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah, but
I think she had it up first, then Alderman Mozio.
Oh, yeah.
I guess some of the questions I have is I know your Director of Governmental Services is the Chief of Staff, but then we've taken the Communications Director away, but we do have 2 community, or communication, I guess it's Communications Manager, et cetera. And then you're also looking at a Marketing and PR Director. What exactly would be the job description for a Marketing and PR Director? And I guess also in that question is, we seem to have a photographer that seems to be showing up at all of our city events. Is that also part of our staff, or is that not a staff member?
No, no, that's not part of the staff.
Okay.
No, it's not part of the staff.
Now, what is it, what is your plans for a Marketing and PR Director? Like, because we already have the communications people in there, what are they going to do differently?
I'm sorry, PR Director? No.
The Director of Marketing and PR is filled.
It's filled?
That is filled.
Okay. Okay. So that,
No, that's in the PR department.
okay. So the only one that you're bringing in then is the Chief of Staff, which is the Director of Government Services?
Yes, that's what we're
Okay.
we're looking at budgeting right now.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Alderman Mozio.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be somewhat of a devil's advocate here, but let's say the council decides, I agree with Alderman Taylor, that we need more firefighters, and we say we want to hire, I don't know what the numbers, I'll just throw it out there. Let's say we want to hire 5 or 8, whatever we have to do to cover that area out there, and that money eats up some of the money that some of these positions, these newly hired positions have taken up. Then what do we do? I mean...
That could be resolved with overtime. It doesn't necessarily...
I'm just doing it. Let's say the council decides we want to hire 5 more police, or whatever. Let's say the council decides we want to hire 5 more code enforcers, and we've already hired these other positions. It puts us in somewhat of a quandary. And Mayor, I believe that the mayor should have the right, just like a head coach, to pick the people they want in certain positions. That's just me as being a coach. You should be able to put the people where you want to be able to put them to best serve your team. But again, the council has the power of the purse, as they say. So it's our decision, basically. It's a joint decision between your administration and us on where we think our priorities are and where we want the taxpayers' money to be spent. And when we have newly hired positions or biggest newly hired positions put in, I think we need a little bit of a job description, because I'm going to tell you right tomorrow, people are going to call us, what does this person do? What does this person do? And to be fair to you, Mayor, you're not the only one to do it. I've been up here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4.
Alderman Newsom says 15.
Well, I'm trying to think of the mayors.
Oh.
Thank you, Alderman Newsom. We came in together. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the number of mayors that I've worked with, and they've all done it to a certain extent. They move people here, they do this, they do that, they want a position here, and I get all that, but, and I'm not saying it's always happened this way. I think the council sometimes, because we hear, for obviously, we're the residents' voice. Not that you're not, but you're here to run the day-to-day operation of the city. We hear this and they say, hey, we need more policemen. Hey, we need more firemen. Hey, we need more code enforcement. Hey, we need more of this, we need more of that. And we're all trying to massage this budget to make it work. And it's hard to defend newly added positions when we really don't know what they're doing. And our residents see things that, hey, you know, there's other priorities that they think that we should be focusing on. And I'm not saying that any of these positions are good, bad, or indifferent, but it puts us in a bad way when we don't really know, you know, what we're going to do with these positions, and are they needed that much? And none of these positions are union, correct?
Yeah, the custodians will be union.
Well, if the,
Right.
okay, but that would be new.
That'll be in local
But I mean, all the liaison, all the, that's not, so that would be,
Code enforcement is SEIU.
okay, so code enforcement.
Custodians
okay.
would be 150,
Right.
but the mayor's
Community
office,
liaison,
those are
chief of
non-union.
staff, anything else, you know, decorator. I'm just-
Decorator would probably be.
I'm being a smart aleck, but you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
the mayor's office,
It would be,
Contemplated
those are not union positions, okay. And where does that, maybe corporation counsel, did he step up? Oh, no, he's right there. All right.
Just hiding back.
Yeah. What does, like I said, put this, you know, I gotta ask the legal. Let's say the council decides, you know, we wanna hire 5 more code enforcers and we wanna hire, you know, 8 more firefighters or whatever, and we got these newly positions, and the council says, no, this is where the money's going. What happens with those people these new positions? Are they out?
Probably.
With no ability, no recourse to say,
Not if they're not union, and even if they're union, there's a layoff.
in union, there's a pecking order, but as a non-union position, there's no pecking order? Really? Okay. I wanted to maybe get that out there, maybe clear that up from my own mind.
if I may explain the internal process that we have for vacancies or newly created positions, when it's followed. We have a position requisition form that the departments have to submit if it's a vacated position from retirement or termination, or if it's a newly, you know, like the new code
Yeah.
enforcement officer, which there used to be more, but I see new in the last few years. The form has to be completed by the department head. It comes to finance. We confirm that the funding is within the budget
Okay.
and what line item that is.
Okay.
It then goes to the human resources, who confirms that what union it's in, doesn't need to be posted internally or externally, all those, you know, union things. Then it goes to the mayor's office for final sign-off. So vacancies, newly, you know, from retirements or what have you, they should not be filled until they've gone through that process.
Now, I'm not so much worried about backfill positions. I get that. It's the newly created, and Mayor, again, we're talking about unity and all that, and I said communication on the night you were sworn in. In going forward, if there's going to be a new position that you're going to request, I would like as an alderman to say, hey, I want to bring this position in, and this is why I want to bring it in, and this is how much I want to pay him, so that I can digest it and look it over, and then I can go, you know, and then I'm not caught off guard by people saying, what's this person doing? What's this problem? What is this person making? It just makes it so much easier. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent, but communicate, hey, this is why we need this. This is what we're going to pay him, you know, just so we know. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. And that's a fair assessment. Alderman,
Yeah, when you're,
oh, I'm sorry.
make your comments, I'm not trying to interrupt.
No, that's a fair assessment, Alderman, and I agree with you. Alderman May.
Thank you. So a lot of my questions other aldermen have already brought up those issues, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. And I'll just make my opinion. I think that the city has become very top-heavy, so you're going to have to definitely convince me to create any new high-level positions in whatever department. I feel like we're a very top-heavy organization. I guess my comments, since the individual, well, okay, my specific is, we used to have a director of communications. I understand the reorg of marketing and events. and now we have two community liaisons. Quite often I heard over the last year that we're poor communicators in the city of Waukegan. And so if we have eliminated the director of communications position, who does that fall on? Who's going to communicate with the public? Who is going to push out information? I hear all the time that, and I don't feel that we do a good job communicating with our residents, whether it's putting together a program where, like the county has, where the aldermen have a monthly newsletter that goes out that is facilitated by the county, but you can put your own brand on it, your own for your ward. Yes. I just thought, I'm just curious about communications. Does that fall into the community liaison's hands now?
No, right now, Mr. Motley, David Motley, is our PR person. What I'm looking at is taking some of those things that David was handling and putting them in its right perspective so he can then now focus on his actual responsibilities. And we've had those, I've had conversations with him, and I'll give you an example. He was in charge of the beach rangers. He was in charge of picking up garbage. I'm like, whoa, 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 that's not what you do. Now, public work, actually we established a committee so we know everybody's functions for doing those things right there, and then get you focused back into what you are good at and what your responsibilities are. So those are some things those are one of the things to handle that. So
he's still in charge of communications?
Yes, ma'am. He's fully in charge of communications. And I think sometimes our communications has gone at a department level only, where the department level, let's say police, fire, public works, or even code enforcement, may have some things that's going on, so they communicate through their own mechanism that works for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, for the overall organization, it goes back to your point, Alderman May, the overall organization doesn't get it all. So that's why we want to make sure that anything that's filtered out there, Mr. Motley has his stamp on it, so it makes sure it's filtered out not only the right way, through the lines of communication where everybody will receive it for the information that needs to be put out. Okay. And that's where we're at now.
Okay. So then my question is, we have two bodies as community liaisons. Will we be provided with like a job description? Like, so if there's two people in a community liaison department or positions, like that's a new position to us. So I guess maybe this isn't the right venue for it, but before we approve the budget, which includes these two positions, I'm just curious what are those positions and yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We have already started on the job descriptions, have already. And let's be clear, everybody. Community liaison is not new to the city of Waukegan. We had the positions before. It was then terminated because of difference of opinion. And then this is why we're going to go back and rewrite through the community liaison is exactly what we want it to be. When I came on as an alderman, there was a community liaison position that was there, and it was focused in on Latino issues only. Well, that's not a community liaison. A community liaison focuses on issues that are community related. I believe that we need to make sure that that position is not geared just to focus in when there's Latin problems. When it comes to garbage, when it comes to, shoveling of the snow, when it comes to, complaints about, those are just not geared just for Latin people only that are complaining, right, or have issues. The city of Waukegan as a whole has issues.
But they call us for those issues.
And they do call you for those issues. But learning and understanding, they also call the mayor's office, where sometimes the issues are taken care of when you don't even know. What I'm looking for is, this is what's going to happen. Those calls come in. 1, inform the alderman. 2, tell the alderman exactly what you've done to address the problem. 3, tell the alderman if they want to follow back up with that constituent. That is what community liaisons is all about. Going out to different social social problems, going to school board meetings. We need, that's the lines of communication that I think that we must have in today's environment. So I'm not, I don't want to say, and if it appears that I've overstepped in that bounds, no. But what I've learned in my past, in dealing with organizations, before you put it globally out to the world, you must have what you call pockets of making sure that you put out the bugs. And that, for example, we might want to try it in one ward to see exactly what the bugs are at, resolve those bugs before we go global. Global means everybody. And that's one of the things I said, this is what we need to do before we said, hey, let's spread this out to all the aldermen, make it full-blown. There's an expectation. We can't live up to that expectation. Now we failed. That's not what good organizations do. And that's where I'm at today. So if it appears that I'm not communicating with you correctly, but if I communicated that we have them, they're up, and you start using them and they don't work out well, then that's a failure. And that's something we don't want to do.
But we are doing it. To be point frank, let's be honest, there was an incident that happened last Friday. I got a call from you, Mayor, at 9:51 about going to Amazon at 10:30. That's not acceptable. I am the alderman for that ward. I should have been notified way ahead of that. The staff knew at least 24 hours ahead of time. How do you think that makes me look to Amazon, like I couldn't be bothered showing up? And I'm their alderman. Yet I'm not informed. Whose job is this? I don't even know who's responsible for communicating that information to me.
Hey, Alderman, before I left, I did a check, 1, 2, 3. Alderman Taylor was not informed. That's when I called you. So again, I'm going to take that hit because,
But it should have been somebody else.
And I agree with you, Alderman. I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing there, but understand, this was the process in which we inherited, we inherited. What I'm trying to do is improve on the process. So part of the improvement of the process, there's going to be bugs. There's going to be challenges that I will accept, will take in and correct. But you're absolutely right. But before I walked out of my office yesterday, I went through that small checklist. When I heard about it, I was like, you like me, when I was an alderman, how dare you have something going on in my ward and don't let me know? That is a disrespect. But I caught it at the end because of my personal checklist. These things will be ironed out, I promise. But we must put them in place, because if they're not in place, they're going to happen over and over and over again, and we cannot afford that. We should not be doing that. And because of the time and energy that all of you put into your wards, this is a matter of importance, not just for me, but for you. But more importantly for the end user, which are I'm calling them customers, but the tax-paying citizens in our districts. So it's important. But in the interim, hey, I'm the mayor. The good and the bad, I accept it. But it's going to be changed. And there's going to be other process improvements that we will need as we move forward. The question is, do we make the process improvements so they can enhance? I expect us to grow. I expect us to be the greatest city on the North Shore. And in being the greatest city, there are certain things, some barriers that we have to get rid of in order to get there. I understand that. I accept that. And we go from there. So I do apologize on that, Ann. I do. I'm sorry, Ann.
Okay, let's go back to the budget.
Back to you, Lisa, Alderman May.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess my comment on the community liaison piece, and then I will quit beating the dead horse, is until we know, why would we put why would we have two community liaisons right off the bat without even knowing the amount of work or what they're going to be handling or really knowing what the description is? I just think that strikes me as odd.
To answer that question, because we knew exactly We had the position before. We all knew that. We had the position before. For those who know, the position of community liaison was a part of our budget.
It wasn't a long-term position,
Yes,
though.
it was.
Was it? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
We had them for about over 10 years. So what we're doing now is kind of redefining exactly what we truly want that position to be. And that's where, so I think it's important that we do that. So to your
So we're going to
point-
have two.
Yes, ma'am, we're going to have two.
Okay, so my last comment is really just a big general comment.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're being asked to pass a budget with a general fund deficit of $3 million. And we're talking about additions and movement of positions. Where did we cut? What did we try to do to save money? You're asking us to pass a $3 million deficit this year, and we're having a projected, I understand that's a very light, that's a loaded term, projected deficit next year of $5 million. So what's the plan? What's the plan? Why aren't we cutting? Where are the cuts?
Ma'am, we put the budget together to give you where we're at right now. We're looking for you to comment with your ideas or review this, comment with ideas, and we go from there. But from a cutting standpoint, if we cut even more than where we're at right now, you're not going to be looking at a Station 2. You're not going to be looking at the number of bodies that we have right now. What's in front of us is where we are at. We're probably going to have to operate with where we're at right now and look to find other revenues for the future or look at other source of revenues as we move forward.
What's another source of revenue?
Well, I mean, the reality of it is there a tax rate somewhere? I don't see that with this automatic group right here. And that's something myself, you, and the rest of our staff are going to have to roll up our sleeves and see where we're at. I wish I can tell you that we can make up this $3 million, but in order to truly make up this $3 million, we heard it earlier, it is salaries and benefits. At the bottom line, that's where we're at, salaries and benefits. From a standpoint of capital improvements, there's just not enough dollars in our budget to do the capital improvements that we would like to do. From a cutting standpoint, salaries and benefits. That's the decision that we have. And it's been that decision for the last 15 years. You want to take 30,000 from a fence, 100,000 from over here, it is salaries and benefits. That's it. That's the true way of chopping down $3 million. We collectively would need to make that decision. Right now, we have a document that we can work with. Obviously, you have some great questions that you brought to my forefront, some things that we need to work on before we move forward. But at the end of the day, salaries and benefits. That's the true way to bring these numbers down, not just today, but in the future. So I look forward to having spirited conversations with all the aldermen about ideas of how we can manage what we have in front of us today and plan, and truly plan, for the future tomorrow. 5-year plans. Hopefully we can get to a 10-year outlook. But as it stands today, what we have in front of us, and no blame, and I want to really say this, and I hope you really pick this up, Luke. I believe that every mayor that was up here who was responsible for the well-being of this community did the best that they can do. They did it with their heart and soul. I believe that. But there are certain realities that we all must face. This is one of them. The second reality of it, how do we get to where we want to get to? We can go back to when Bob Sabanjan, number 2, was here. Massive layoffs. We have them. Or we try to manage what we have at the best that we can to make sure we continue to deliver on the goods and services that is expected from every resident and citizen of this community. I hold my comments for later. As we come back, I talk to you, you talk to me, we make some adjustments, we move over, we move on. But it's where we're at. It's where we're at, folks. I look forward to, talking to you about it. And that's all I really can say at this point. This is the first of the presentation of the budget. I know we're going to have more. It's going to happen. It's just the way the ball bounces, every time I've been up here. So I look forward to that, and we go from there.
Last quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did the purchasing come back to the finance department? I thought I read that somewhere in here.
Did the purchasing come back to the finance department?
Right, so there still is not a purchasing department. There's still not centralized purchasing. But what we have done is, and Alderman Velko brought up the fact that we did have personnel come to the finance department that had previously been in the collector's office. So one of the staff accountants, who is a Waukegan native and a U of I grad with a degree in accounting, has been promoted after very positive performance to a senior accountant, so she can focus more of her time on purchasing compliance. She's not going to be the purchasing manager, but she'll be working more diligently to ensure compliance. We identified probably over 25 contracts that should have been brought to City Council last fiscal year that were not. Not that things were done intentionally, but GNS Services is an example where they had a contract let by Public Works for grass cutting, and then they got used for the beach, and then they also got used by code enforcement. And when you added that all together, it was more than the contract amount. So she's going to focus more on that. And then the fiscal coordinator, who was a finance department employee before and is coming back to the finance department, is going to take food and beverage, hotel tax, miscellaneous AR, and some of those ad hoc reporting functions off her plate so that we can focus on it. But we have not added, a purchasing department or a purchasing manager, maybe someday when we have the resources, but not a full-blown purchasing department, no.
And before we close, for public comment, the monies that are in the budget for these assessments of our entire operation, you're going to find that's going to be one way to curve off some of these, some of this budgetary items. I promise you that. Some of the things that are out there that we're doing that are just, I think, merely probably outdated or can be changed for more efficient and effectiveness, which results in the cost savings. That's going to be probably our most critical area of where we can show that we can make up some of these differences over the next 2 to 3 years. Other than that, any more questions from the Alderman at this time? With that being said, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any questions. With that being said, we have public comment. We have, you're kidding me. We have none at this time. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming and hearing this. It is great to see so many faces in the audience. I hope if you have any ideas, feel free to call my office, talk to the alderman as we move forward with this process. That being said, motion by Alderman Mozio, second by Alderman Taylor to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Motion is passed and carried. Thank you, Alderman, as well. Yeah.